Hi everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Watercolor Wednesday. I'm Leslie Watkins. Today I'm going to be continuing with the holiday border in my watercolor sketchbook, and I'm going to be using a Christmas rose. This is not a true rose, it's in the hellebore family, but it looks like a rose because they have 5 petals. Now I trimmed off one that was looking pretty tattered, and because I wanted to save all the ones that were coming along for Christmas. These flowers will bloom under the snow here, usually around Christmas each year, and they have these beautiful evergreen leaves that look something like this. Okay, usually they're just a shape that looks a little bit like this, but every once in a while you get one with these 3 lobes, and I really like that one. And then you can see this one's kind of beat up. These plants are tough, really tough. These leaves are quite leathery. They're nice and thick. They're very substantial. They're a beautiful, beautiful shade of a deep green. And then the stems, let's see if I can put this against a white background so that you can see it better. Hang on, let's open up the book. And while I'm busy doing this, please say hello in the comments. Let me know where you are tuning in from. I've got a end of year goal that I want to meet with the number of subscribers on my channels, both on YouTube and Facebook. So if you haven't subscribed already, or if you haven't followed, liked, or all the things, please do that so that so I can get a nice number at the end of the year. I don't remember what the goal is for Facebook, but I know that on YouTube I'm getting very close to 3,000, and I would love to hit 3,000 by December 31st. And I'm thinking that I may even have a kind of a countdown or a prize opportunity. So only the people that comment will be able to get the messages. So make sure that you comment, you like and follow, and you'll be able to stay notified of what's coming up. So anyway, what I wanted to show you here are these really pretty kind of red streaky, there you go, you see that? You see how the stems have that kind of a streaky, speckled, striated pattern with the deep reddish brown. So very, very pretty. And the bud, here's an example of a bud, and you can see how pretty that is, how it emerges from the stem. Well, you don't see that at all. Hold on, let me see if I can get you a good shot. There we go. There, that's what I'm talking about there. All right, and then you can see inside this flower at that beautiful center. And now here is the one that has been really busted up, but look at it, look how big that is. You can see it's very much the size of the palm of my hand, and how beautiful that is. And look at that center. All right, so they're very decorative, very beautiful. And again, these petals, they're not nearly as thick as the leaves, but they're strong. And And here's another example, of course, of that bud emerging from the stem there. The back of the flower. Now when you're designing with flowers, always pay attention to the backs as well, because they make for wonderful variation, and oftentimes there's a lot of interest going on behind the flower there. So I think you can see a little of that. And it's always fun to paint white on white. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about painting white flowers today. But before I begin, I just want to double check my connection, make sure that you can see and hear me okay. And yes, and I see Ginger. She says, so glad they bloomed in time for this video. Well, you know, I knew I was fairly confident that they were going to be blooming in time for Christmas, so that wasn't such a concern. And if they weren't ready for today, and actually they're really not. This ragged one is the only one that was really open for business today. But next week and the week after, they're going to start really opening up and putting on quite the show. And what I will do is, when they are in full swing, I'll go back out there and I'll take some pictures so that you can all see how they look, because they're just so pretty. And I love being able to push the snow aside and see them blooming under the snow. I think that's so wonderful. So really, you know, when you consider the garden journal or the watercolor sketchbook and you want to go out into the gardens, there are things, even in New England, this is a zone 5, that you can find blooming nearly year-round. So the Christmas rose will bloom in December and January, and then things like the witch hazel are right behind. So if you remember way back when we did this book, the first page was 3/22 of 2023, and I started with witch hazel. So and then here are the snowdrops, and they came along on 3/26, so that's March. So really, you know, maybe February is the only month that we don't have something, and maybe if I took a little more time to search, I could find something. Who knows? So anyway, and I see Bonnie. Hi, Bonnie. Welcome, welcome. I'm glad everybody's here. So this isn't going to be a very long video today. At least I don't think it will be. I have lots to do, as I'm sure everybody else does. And I have to confess that my studio is really a mess right now with all the Christmas activity and the things that I've been doing. So I need to clear some things out today so I can keep going in time for all the things I want to accomplish before too long. So so let's talk a little bit about white flowers. There are all different colors of white. When you start putting different white flowers next to one another, you'll be surprised at the range. So typically with flowers, there's going to be some greens. So in this particular white, it's more of a beigey or a off-white. I would call it a warm white. And then it also has some cool tones, some coolness, where it has that sort of yellowish greenish tinge on it. Now there are warm whites, there are cool whites, there are pink whites, there are whites that are have a lot of yellow or have a lot of violet in them. So when you have your specimen, and of course it always helps when you're working from life, and especially when you're using natural light, okay, now I have a north light window here to my left that's illuminating my subject. And by the way, can you see how, as I'm holding the flower, you can see right through that petal and see the stem underneath it? That transparency, or translucence, I should say. So beautiful. So lots to consider. The other thing is that this petal has a lot of texture on it. Look at it. Look at all of those beautiful ridges. So that's going to be a lot of fun to paint. All right, so as I look at it, some of the things, some of the elements that I see are the texture. Okay, I'm looking for the warms and the cool tones. I can see that the light is striking the center of the flower. It's sort of a domed, see what shape that is. It's sort of an inverted cone shape. Do you see that? How all the stamens are making that sort of wonderful shape? So that shape is collecting light on the left side, and it's casting shadow on the right. So all of this area is in shadow, and I can also see that translucency that allows me to see that stem that's on the other side of that petal there. And then all of these little things, you may be wondering, why is she painting such a beat up, ugly flower? Well, I think these things are really interesting, and I may not paint them all. In fact, for the first one, I'm just going to sketch it as though it was completely intact. But as I continue with the painting or the overall design, I may want to add some of these things for interest. And then, of course, this little petal is perfect. And I've got a little leaf here and a second leaf here. So what you notice here, if I can hold this in such a way that you could see, is that this stem from this bud emerges from the stem down here at the base of this little side petal leaf. And it's probably not even a leaf. It's probably a oh my god, I'm sorry, my brain just flew away. But there's another botanical term for the cover of the bud, and if I think of it later, I'll say. And if somebody out there already knows what it is, put in the comments, please. So everybody, make sure you tell me where you're from. I love to know where you're tuning in from. Okay, so I think that's enough talk, and we'll get busy painting. I'm going to zoom you in a little bit. So that's what I have so far. And just to refresh your memory, or in case you haven't been here before, my idea is to create a border along the top of the 2-page spread, and then maybe have something hanging down the center, so sort of like this. We'll see. Everything is subject to change, but that's my initial thought. And I'm just going to be using 3 watercolor paints today. It's very simple. I've got my yellow, my red, and my blue. And at this end, I've got more of the same yellow so that I can get the greens mixed a little bit easier. Everything that I painted on in this entire sketchbook was using just those 3 colors. So if you're new to watercolor, or if you're interested in learning more about watercolor, you do not need to go out and buy a load of paint. You just need 3 good paints, yellow, red, and blue. And if you are interested in learning more, I would be happy to have you in the Watercolor Card Club. In January, we're going to start the new year fresh. I'm going to be talking a lot about color, red, yellow, and blue, and color mixtures. And I'm going to be helping people who are just starting out for the first time with watercolor. So I will have more information about that on my website, and that's dandelioncottagedesign.com. You're welcome to go visit there. And as we get closer to January, I'm going to be updating the information on the Watercolor Card Club, because I'm going to make some changes to make it a little bit friendlier for people who are just starting out. Alright, so I've got my specimen here, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this one flat. Well, maybe not. I've got a very small area in front of the camera here, and I'm trying to arrange things so that you can see something and I can see something. The other thing about the hellebores, newer cultivars have been bred to face a little more upwards, but the older varieties and species tend to face downwards, and that makes sense when you consider the snow that's going to be falling on the flowers. They don't want to grow like little cups that are going to collect the snow. They want the snow to fall off of them, so they face downwards. There are several different cultivars. So, well, actually there's a lot because they've gone very popular lately. But the Christmas rose that I'm painting here today is the white one. And then there are others that have more pinks and red violets in them, and some of those bloom closer to Easter, and those are called the Lenten roses. And then there's a whole lot of new ones that in all different colors and with various names. So it would be fun to take a look to see what ones might be growing well in your area. I find that they're very easy to grow here. They grow in the shade, and they will take some sunlight, but we have them in the woods and by the wood pile, and someplace where I can especially see the Christmas roses around Christmas time, so that's why I have it growing near my wood pile. So I think what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put one over here, and I think I'll have a bud over here. So I'm going to turn this one a little bit so it's catching the light better. Okay, and I'm just going to, oops, see what I mean? Not a lot of room. There we go, kind of. I think what I need to do is trim my stem. Okay. All right. So I'm going to begin with a very simple pencil sketch. And I want to make sure I get the center of my flower positioned where it's not too close to the edge. And I want to make sure that I have 5 petals. You know, I do take some license with the arrangement of the petals and of course setting up the specimen, but you do want to make sure that you have the appropriate amount of petals or the right shaped leaf or whatever the particular characteristic may be that specimen displays. In other words, I'm not doing a botanical illustration. I'm not copying what I see. I'm much more interested in design and decoration. But I do want the plants to look like the kind of flower or leaf or branch or whatever that it's meant to depict. All right, so there's a very basic, I think you can see that. I'll zoom you in just for a moment, a little bit, so you can just see there's hardly anything there, just enough to keep me where I need to be. I consider the sketch to be my road map. And then I want this, this beautiful bud. So I'm going to have that kind of tucked in underneath these leaves. I'm going to get some of that stem. And it's kind of a really nice oval kind of shape. And this is a place where I can see the back of the flower and where that stem attaches. And it takes a kind of a corner angle here, the stem does, so I want to capture that. And there's a little bit of a paler green coming through there. All right, so I think that's enough for now. I'll probably add some more of these beautiful evergreen leaves coming down the side here, but let's just begin with this. And I've got a spritzer. I'm going to go ahead and give my watercolor paints a spritz. I should have done this earlier, but didn't think of it. There we go. And for the white of the Christmas rose, I think I'm going to use a, because the center is such a beautiful yellow, I think I'm going to use a pale blue violet. But before I get started, I see that there's some activity going on over in our group here. Let me see if there's any questions. Bonnie says her studio is a mess too. She has a sign that says mess in place. Yeah, I don't need a sign. Everywhere you look it says that. And then Ginger says operculium, and I don't know what operculium is, Ginger. I forgot what I said. What do you mean by that? Ginger as a sign says, I'm not a hoarder, I'm a crafter. They look similar. Well, that's certainly true. If you ever look at Einstein's desk, it was a complete mess, which is I'm you know, really I'm a very organized person. My biggest problem is that I live in such a tiny place. So Dandelion Cottage was designed to be a very small art studio, and I lived elsewhere, and then I ended up moving into my studio and brought in things from my old studio where I had a great big loft in Jersey City, and there was a lot of stuff there. And then of course I moved from my apartment that was in New York, and that all arrived here, and it didn't take long at all before everything got really cluttered, and the you know, all my paper crafting and art supplies take up quite a bit of room. So I will be, one of my intentions for 2024 is to reduce the amount of paper crafting supplies I have. So stay tuned for some BOGO sales coming up. Probably, maybe in May, July, something like that. It's going to take time to get ready and sort through everything, get it all cataloged and listed on my special BOGO sale page. So it will be coming your way. Alright, so what I've done now is I've just added a little bit of a yellow and a yellow-green wash to those areas, and now I'm going to mix up a very pale kind of a blue-violet with a little bit of yellow in it so that it's more neutral, and I'm going to use that in the shadow areas on my petals. And I'm using such a tiny amount of paint, so this is really just about as light as you can go. I'm using plenty of water, and I'm just kind of sketching with my brush now. I'm just sort of mapping things out, getting these shapes established. So I'm looking at the overall shape, the texture, all the places where the shadows are collecting. I'm using the tip of my brush, and this is my smaller brush. This is a number 4, and I'm just using it as if I were sketching with a pencil, and I'm just adding in some of the details on this particular specimen. And I'm going to let the edge on the right here kind of fade away, and just have a soft edge towards the edge of the paper. And actually this area of the flower is where the petals are broken off. And while that wasn't entirely intentional, it works out very well here, because it just looks like those petals continue. Now, in some areas on the petals, I have a little of that kind of a yellow green, so I'll take advantage of that. Okay, so that is my first wash of color, and I'll zoom you in. All right, so very pale, Just get this so you can see it well enough. So there you go. Okay, so just a very quick, just took a couple of seconds, a minute or two, to get that started. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue careful observation of my specimen and look for all the little details, paying attention to the light and shade and form. And if you're interested in learning more about color mixing, values, light and shade, creating form, those are all the things that I go over in the Watercolor Card Club. And it's a monthly subscription. We paint a new specimen each month, and there is a live Zoom class where I can critique your work and you can ask questions. And there's also a new instructional video each month that features a different specimen and shows you how I go about painting it in much more detail than I can go in one of these quick live sessions. So if you're interested in that, just go to dandelioncottagedesign.com, look for the Watercolor Card Club, and you'll find all the information there. Okay, now Kelly says, pretty. Thanks, Leslie. I'm not done, Kelly. Don't go anywhere. Hang on a second. That's just the first wash. We've got at least 2 more to go. All right, so I'm going to get back into the center of this flower, and what I'm doing is I'm taking my yellow and I'm making a slightly stronger mixture, and it's got a little bit of blue in there, so it's sort of a yellowish green. And while the paper's still damp, I can just dab in a little extra color and kind of move that where I want it. I'm going to leave that alone, let that have a moment to set up, and while that's drying, I'm going to go back into that kind of a pale blue-violet that's neutralized again with a little bit of yellow. And this specimen is a little bigger than the size that I'm painting it at, and I just determined the size by what area I had available to me on the page here. So I made it a slightly smaller than how it actually appears in life, but not much. paying careful attention to the direction that all of these ruffles and ridges are going in. And according to the area on the petal, some of these neutral tones can lean a little more to the warm or the cool. And that's another thing that I talk about at length in the Watercolor Card Club is temperature, because temperature, the warmness or the coolness of a color tone is so important. So all of these things are this is all the information that you can use to create a convincing and a beautiful piece of art, but it doesn't happen by accident. Okay, so there are centuries and centuries of knowledge and information that have been passed down from artists that that you can use, that are available to you to be able to understand the language of art and how to communicate whatever that message is that you're hoping to communicate with your viewers. So it doesn't happen by accident, okay? It's not talent. It's how receptive you are to the information and finding that information so that you can use it and practice it and get better and better, and pretty soon you'll be able to create a piece of art that you're proud of, that you'd like to share with somebody. And it doesn't take long, and of course if you've got somebody to help you along the way, it's going to make it happen that much faster. I've been extremely fortunate in the amazing art instructors that I was able to study with, and I'm deeply obligated to share that information with others who want to travel down the same path. And I love helping people to get started painting. I know what it was like to be a young art student and frustrated and feeling that I could never do the quality of work that I saw all around me at the Art Students League, but I spent a lot of time there, and I studied hard, and I practiced a lot, and I just there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. I just love it. And there's something about spending a quiet afternoon looking at something beautiful and trying to capture some of that beauty with paper and paints. And watercolor is particularly nice because it's so immediate, and it's easy to take with you when you travel, or if you just want to go out into the garden and do a quick painting, maybe of some chickens, some flowers, the birds. Maybe you just want to do a little holiday design like I'm doing here. It's just an easy way to go about that. So all I'm doing while I'm talking here is I'm just continuing to add a little more color, a little more value, and it's still very much on the light side on the value scale, but I'm going to start adding some darks now. So I think what I'd like to do is I want to mix up some of that kind of maroon red color that is forming those little streaks on the stem. So let's see what that does for us. Put a little bit under here. And I don't want to overdo because there is a lot of green in that stem as well. So I just want to put a couple of little touches like so. And that's also going to provide an area for a darker kind of an accent there. Now as far as the opened flower goes, I'm not going to be able to go too much darker because it is a white flower, but I can take a little bit of my mixture here and I can add my cast shadows. So there's a couple of places where the petals overlap that can be a tiny bit darker. Don't forget that the paint will dry slightly lighter. And maybe a little bit over here. Just let that fade off. I'm going to add a little bit of red to my yellow mixture because I see a little warmth in the cast shadow over here, so I want to introduce just a touch of that warmth there and let that fade off. Just soften that edge. Now the same idea on the bud. There's a lot of different colors and tonalities going on within the white of these things. A piece of dust there. Okay, and then the last thing I'm going to do is in the center of my flower, I'm going to put in a couple of details here. So just sort of what I want to do is to indicate the kind of texture that all these little stamens make. So they're sort of lined up around the edge, kind of bigger ones, and then the center area kind of points up. I'm going to go back into my shadow mixture here. Add a couple of touches. Let those fade away. Soften that. When this is completely dry, I can go back in and put some additional details there. And then finally what I want to do is, because I love this leaf with the 3 lobes on it, so let me show you that one again. This one. Okay, I want to have that sort of trailing down over here. So I'm going to quickly add that in. And I'm going to go ahead and just use my brush to sketch with. You can go back to your pencil if you prefer, but I just want a kind of a simple shape. And so let's see, I think I'll have the stem coming from here and swinging in this way. And again, I'm using my artistic license here to design that leaf so that it looks nice with the rest of the design that I have here. So I'm taking a shape something like that. Okay, I think you can see that. And now I'm going to mix up a nice medium green, not too dark, not too light, and I'm going to just drop in a little bit of that color. The leaves on the hellebore have very distinctive veining, so I'm going to leave some of the lighter areas for the places that I want the veins to show. Okay, so I'm thinking something like that. And while this is still very wet, I'm going to add a little more blue to my green mixture, make it a little stronger so I have a much darker green. And I can just make it a little bit darker where it needs to be. And then finally, where that very dark area, I can add just a little bit of violet to the mix, and that's going to make that darker yet in the shadow areas. Okay, and then I'll leave that alone. Oh, leave it alone. Haha. Didn't mean to make a pun there. But anyway, I'm going to leave the leaf alone, let that dry, and then I'll come back in and establish some more of those shapes of the veins. All right, so there is the addition of my Christmas rose. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching. I will be back tomorrow for Paper Crafting Thursday at 12 noon live on Dandelion Cottage Design here on Facebook. And please don't forget to follow and subscribe on both my Facebook and my YouTube pages so I can get some good numbers by the end of the year, and maybe we'll have a little countdown as we get very close to those big numbers. So stay well, stay happy, stay creative, and I will see you next time.